A Form 6 student hauled an international boarding school to court over the purported bungling of letters of recommendation that led to his rejection by 15 premier universities in the United States. The improper handling of his recommendation letters led to his rejection from 15 universities in the US, including Harvard, Stanford, and Yale in March last year. Like, the universities he's mentioning right here are like Harvard, Yale, Stanford, and like, let's be real right here, the selectivity rate there for international students is less than 1%. These are tremendously selective schools, and if you don't get in, then that's kind of like the expected thing. Alright, I don't know about you, but one thing that I know as someone who's actually been through this process is that your recommendation letters are far from the thing that decides whether you're actually going to get into a college or not. In reality, admissions to college, especially super elite ones, is a process that is holistic. It depends upon a lot of different factors. So the first question that I have for this kid is, bro, if you're not an admissions officer, then how do you know why you didn't get in? How do you know it was the recommendation letters and not something else? Do you have a crystal ball, maybe? Are you an interdimensional college applicant with perfect SATs, multiple IMO medals, patents for inventions that have generated millions and millions of dollars in annual revenue? Are you James Wan, maybe? Michelle Yeoh? No? What? How could that possibly be? If you really feel somehow that your application was rejected on the basis of your recommendation letters, then maybe that demonstrates that you just lack enough self-evaluation. Like, the reality is that US colleges, they encourage you to think about different possibilities, and that's reflected in the college essays process. You often have to think abstractly, and you have to think about how your personality, yourself, and your own desires and goals for the future intersect with the vision of who you want to be. By extension, just because you score above a certain level on the SAT or in your SPM, A-level, IGCSE examinations, it doesn't mean that you're going to get into Stanford or Yale or Princeton or anything else. No, like, they require something a little bit more than that. So what if you have 4 A stars? These schools don't care just about academics. They care about whether or not you're one of the best people in the world to actually fill up their classes, and that means that you can be perfect, academically speaking, but you can just not get in. Speaking of academics, he got into UC San Diego, UC Davis, and the Washington University, it said in the article right here. Those are some pretty incredible schools on their own as well, and if he wants to go right here, I'm pretty sure that he would have an incredible college experience. But then, if he applied and got into UC Davis and UC San Diego, it's not really that far of a stretch to think that he also applied to UCLA and UC Berkeley. So, bro, if your academic results were so incredible, then why did you not also get into UC Berkeley and UCLA? Is there something that we're missing right here? Are your academics not as perfect as you mentioned right there, despite the fact that you... But you see, that's not the only problem with what's happened right here. Let's talk about the recommendation letters thing. So for context, usually if you want to apply for admission to a US university, what you would do is that you would seek recommendations from at least 2 teachers and also a counselor along the way who essentially know you well. So like, usually what happens right there is that you have a personal relationship with them enough to the point that they're able to write something that's personal, that indicates your talent, your potential, and stuff like that. So the whole thrust of his argument right here is that recommendation letters that the school was supposed to sign and get for him were just handled improperly. Now, I handle the college applications process for a lot of different people, and I can tell you for a fact that this is not generally how the college applications process works for different people, and it's your responsibility to approach them. So there's an immediate question right here of like, why couldn't he have found a teacher on his own, and why was he even relying on the school in the first place? It does mention that he is a scholar, and maybe that's one of the things that affected what happened along the way. Charitable response to all of this is that Because our dude was on a scholarship, he believed that the scholarship body was going to settle everything, including approach the teachers and stuff like that. But that just demonstrates that if he didn't really care about that stuff, then he probably just didn't care enough about his college application, which is something that you shouldn't be doing when it's a point of your life when you should be demonstrating the very most attention, care, and understanding of what you actually have to do. But somehow or another, he just didn't. Of course, if we say that maybe he was a scholar and the scholarship body normally handles these things, then maybe we could say that, yeah, like, they didn't do their job, but if you are a good college applicant, then you would focus upon those things, which it seems like he did not. This is pretty embarrassing because if he's a scholar, then you would think to yourself that he's someone who is highly qualified, highly responsible, and can actually take action along the way. If he really passed the buck down the line and he expected his school to basically settle everything with the scholarship body without paying attention right there, well, that's a huge problem there, isn't there?
But now, something a little more serious.
How did he even know about his recommendation letters in the first place? Like, he specifically said that the recommendation letters of his school followed a standard template. But bro, how would you know that unless you read your own recommendation letters? The fact that he read his recommendation letters means, logically, that he did not waive his FERPA. Quick primer, FERPA basically refers to the
Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act.
What it does is that it allows you basically to access all of your educational records, which include your recommendation letters and stuff like that. So if you apply to colleges, then in the Common App, they ask you whether you will waive your FERPA right there. It's usually recommended that you waive FERPA because FERPA basically makes it so that you can access your own records, right? So then colleges, if they see that you waive your FERPA, then they are less likely to think that maybe, oh, this guy went ahead and swayed Miss Chan to write an incredible recommendation letter, and they are more likely to have faith in this process. So if he had access to his own recommendation letters and he knew what they were like, then that suggests somehow that he did not waive FERPA. And maybe the universities were spooked because he didn't waive FERPA, and that's why he didn't get into his top choice college.
But for the sake of argument, let's say I was wrong and he didn't read his recommendation letters.
If you didn't have access to your own recommendation letters, then how did you know that they were written using a standardized template? Bro, it doesn't make sense.
Suppose he did waive his FERPA and he shouldn't have had access to his recommendation letters. How did he read them anyway? Anyway, that aside,
the schools that he got into are honestly pretty great. Like, UC Davis is incredible, and UC San Diego as well. I have students there who have ended up graduating and working in companies such as Tesla, Discord, and various other places along the way as well. So if you're saying that you really are having your earnings jeopardized as a result of getting into a sort of lower tier college, then get off your high horse. If you would literally just go out there and sue your school for something that you were unable to take responsibility for, and even in the presence of what are likely mediocre, academic results, then frankly speaking, that just demonstrates that maybe your attitude isn't very right. If you're out there and you're watching this video right now, bro, life is long. College is just 4 years of your life. And honestly, where you end up at doesn't have a long-term bearing on who you're going to become as much as the kinds of things that you choose to do with your time. So if you're out there and you just feel a lack of self-confidence and stuff, I encourage you really to just stop wasting your time with this dumb lawsuit, retract it, and just go about your life. I think that will make things easier for you and allow you really to just move on with life in a much more productive way along the way. And anyway, that's just my opinion. You're entirely entitled to do whatever the heck it is that you want right here, but just don't expect people to look upon you with sparkly eyes and imagine that you're an advocate for justice. Stop being an embarrassment to Malaysia. Cheers, over and out.